The Meat Man. I was on YouTube, trying to find funny or scary videos when I found something interesting. There was a user called The Meat Man, and he made videos using strange puppets with stop motion. The thumbnail that grabbed my attention showed a puppet made entirely of ground meat. When I clicked on the video, I was surprised by how well made and detailed the meat puppets were. They had hair, clothes, and even facial features that looked so real. I was almost expecting them to move by themselves because they were so lifelike. The episode 1 watched was episode 5, and it was not like the usual YouTube videos I saw. In episode 5, there were 3 characters named Lisa, Steve, and Michael. They were getting ready for another character, Dawn, to join them. The background music was kind of strange, like a mix between a calliope and a merry-go-round, and it made it hard to hear the characters. They were cleaning up a house that looked like it was drawn on a sheet of paper with windows near the top and some furniture made from modeling clay. While they cleaned, a voice told us that Lisa was lazy and not helping much. But I thought that wasn't true because she was doing just as much work as the others, and they seemed to be working together well. After a bit of funny, jerky cleaning, a hand came down from the ceiling and praised Steve and Michael for their good work. Then it pointed at Lisa and scolded her for being lazy. The voice said she couldn't join the party later because she hadn't helped. As Michael and Steve left the scene, Lisa's character curled up, and loud party music started playing. I felt sad as the last scene showed Lisa sitting alone against a wall. Even though the party music was loud, it looked like she might be crying. I didn't understand what was happening and why it made me feel weird for watching this lumpy, not real person suffer. Then, my strange interest was caught. I checked out the channel and saw that there were about 10 videos, all uploaded in the last month or two. The channel wasn't very big, with only around 80 subscribers. The videos were made using that stop-motion style, making the weirdness of the puppets stand out. I found the first video titled Friendship and decided to give it a watch. The video was about Lisa, the meat puppet from earlier, feeling sad and lonely. She mostly sat in the same position, looking like she was crying. Suddenly, 2 other puppets, Steve and Michael, entered the scene, and Lisa seemed happy to see them. The pudgy hand, called Father, said he noticed she was lonely and got her some friends so she wouldn't be sad. The hand was nicer to her now than in the previous episode 1 watched. They hugged and promised to be friends forever. The episode ended, and the screen went black. It was a short video, less than 5 minutes, but it left me with a strange and uneasy feeling. Those puppets looked so odd, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was not right about them. Despite feeling weird, I was curious and loaded up the second video. It was like a train wreck, and I couldn't look away, wanting to see what would happen next no matter how strange it made me feel. The next 2 episodes were a lot like what I expected. They were called Cohabitation and Family, and they showed Lisa and her new roommate setting up furniture and getting to know each other. They chatted, but the weird music in the background made it hard to hear them sometimes. It was the usual stop-motion stuff, but there were strange pauses in the middle of the animation. Once, while the boys, Steve and Michael, were talking with Lisa about dinner plans, the animation suddenly stopped. For about 5 or 6 seconds, the puppets just stood there while loud crying came from the background. In the midst of the crying, there was a soft but angry voice trying to quiet it down. I had to rewind it a few times to catch it, and I wondered if this was some kind of artsy film. Was the creator trying to make a point or something? Maybe hiding it in the stop motion to make it more artsy? Things turned bad for Lisa in the 4th episode. I noticed that while the first 3 videos came out one each day, the 4th video took almost a week. This was strange, and it got even weirder when I watched it. The video, about 5 minutes long, showed Lisa going out on her own one night and getting lost. She went for a walk, even though Father Hand had told her not to, and ended up lost in a forest drawn on white paper. The trees looked like the big swampy kind you see in kids' drawings, and it was clear Father Hand wasn't a great artist. He wasn't consistent in how he told the story either, because his voice and tone got angrier as the episode went on. The Lisa puppet on the show looked really gross, making the whole thing even scarier. The puppet was falling apart, and in the middle of the show, a piece of it fell off and landed on the table. The talking suddenly stopped, but the music kept playing as the puppet just stood there, looking gray. I could hear someone stomping off angrily in the background, and for a moment, there was someone begging to be let go before it cut to the sound of screaming. The video was edited badly, and they tried to cut that part out. When the show came back, the Lisa puppet was whole again, with what seemed like a fresh piece of meat attached. But the piece that fell off was still on the table, like it was useless now. Towards the end of the episode, the Lisa puppet bent over and seemed to cry while alone and scared in the forest. There was soft and frantic crying in the background, but I'm not sure if we were supposed to hear it. Suddenly, Father Hand came and showed her the way home. It scolded her for running away and said she must never do it again. Like a real dad, the Hand seemed both relieved and mad. Lisa went back with him to the house, but Steve and Michael puppets didn't seem happy to see her. They ignored her, and the episode ended with Lisa crying in a corner. Then the screen went black, and the credits rolled. I hesitated before clicking on episode 6, not sure if I really wanted to watch it. Episode 4, called Thankless, helped me understand episode 5 better. Father Hand was probably punishing Lisa for going on a walk, even though the star of the episode made it clear she was just taking a stroll. The episodes were easy to follow, but something about them still made me feel uneasy. Why were these characters living under this Fatherly Hand character? Why did the narrator call them roommates if Father Hand treated some of them like children? The whole show had a strange, dreamlike feeling, and there seemed to be a story underneath that I just didn't get. Even though it was weird, I was curious and had to see how it turned out. Episode 6 was the strangest one yet, and the comments on the video showed I wasn't the only one feeling that way. It was called Melancholy, and it began with the same weird dance music and a shot of Lisa hunched up and crying. But this time, the crying wasn't fake like before. The episode was 3.5 minutes of someone sobbing really sadly, the kind of sobs that feel both hopeless and scary. The camera slowly zoomed in on the detailed face of the meat puppet as the heartbreaking sobs continued. I've seen some strange videos, but this one was the weirdest. The final shot showed the eye of the meat puppet, with the meat starting to change and bright spots decorating it. Just before the screen went black, you could hear the person sobbing sounding more scared before the episode ended. After watching that strange episode, I needed a break. I read the comments from others, trying to understand what I had just seen. The Meat Man's audience couldn't agree if it was some kind of art or something darker. One user said the crying and screaming were unique and not found on usual free-use sites. Another thought it might be part of someone's scary fantasy, while others believed it was just a fancy art piece. What they did agree on was that even if it was acting, the screams felt too real, and it made everyone uncomfortable. I hoped episode 7 would be more normal, but jealousy was just as weird. The narrator said Dawn was fitting in well with the house, and everyone wanted to be her friend. Father Hand, Steve, and Michael were all excited around her, but Lisa didn't want to be friends. She was in another room, still huddled up and crying. The narrator said Lisa was jealous of Dawn, and Father was getting mad at her. The sobs from the last episode were gone, but there were some other quiet noises over the loud music. The puppets looked better, and I guess they changed the meat on them recently. Father Hand yelled at Lisa, but she stayed huddled up and crying. Finally, he left, and the episode ended with the camera zooming in on the little meat woman, stuck in her sadness. I hesitated before watching the next episode, wondering if I really wanted to see more. It felt like I had been watching for a long time, but it turned out that all 7 episodes took less than 30 minutes. Something about how the characters were interacting had grabbed my attention, but there was also something darker than I expected. It felt like someone was confessing something personal, and I felt almost like I shouldn't be watching. Despite feeling uneasy, I clicked on the next episode, telling myself that 3 more episodes wouldn't be too bad. I was wrong. Episode 8, called Hatred, started with Lisa leaning against a paper wall as the others tried to get into her room. They started by asking her nicely to come out, wanting to talk and see her. The narrator said Lisa had been avoiding her chores and saying mean things about the other roommates to Father Hand. Of course, Father Hand shared these things with the others, and now they wanted to talk with her. They knocked on the door, then banged and kicked it, trying to get in. Lisa covered her ears and put her head between her knees. The narrator told us that Michael and Steve wanted to talk with her, and Dawn was upset that Lisa judged her so quickly. As they banged and pounded on the paper door, suddenly Father Hand appeared. Lisa looked up from her knees, unsure about the sudden appearance of the fatherly hand. Father Hand said she had brought trouble to the house, and he couldn't ignore her rudeness anymore. The hand turned into a fist and started beating the puppet really hard. Pieces of meat fell off and got squashed as it was pounded. The wire body got twisted and bent, and the whole scene was made scarier by the carnival tune playing in the background. It ended as Steve and Michael knocked, and the camera zoomed in on the sad pile of meat that Lisa had become. The episode ended suddenly, and when the screen went dark, I saw a pale figure staring back at me. It took me a moment to realize the pale and sweaty figure was myself. Next was episode 9, called Contrition, and there was no doubt in my mind that I would watch it. I needed to know what happened next. Episode 9 was completely different from the others. It was a shaky video of someone walking through a dark wood at night. A yellow light gave a small patch of brightness, and the person recording was breathing heavily as they walked through the woods. The woods were eerily silent, and the leaves crunching underfoot were loud and jarring. The video was 4 minutes long, and for 3.5 minutes, it was just walking feet, crunching leaves, and heavy breathing. Suddenly, they stopped in front of a small round stone, the ground freshly turned up and put to rest messily. "Sleep well, Lisa," said the voice of the person holding the camera. Then everything went black again. Without thinking, I clicked on the 10th episode, eager to see how it all ended. Episode 10, called Ambivalence, looked like things were back to normal. Dawn was on the couch, laughing at something on a TV we couldn't see. Michael and Steve were doing their usual things, cleaning or chatting. The wall that used to be Lisa's room was gone. Father Hand watched over them kindly as the narrator talked about Michael looking for a misplaced book and Dawn enjoying her favorite show. Everything seemed okay, except for Lisa's broken body on the floor. The damage Father Hand did was still there, and the meat was now brown and dry. Flies circled around it, and if one of the puppets had to walk near her, they seemed to ignore her body. The only character who seemed to notice her was Father Hand. He would look down at her from time to time, almost smugly, and shake his head before looking back at the other happy puppets. The episode ended, and again I was left wondering what I had just seen. The video had moved into my head in less time than it would take to watch a movie. I moved on to other videos and activities, but the images were never far from my mind. I usually share strange videos with friends, even on Reddit, but not this one. I was hesitant to talk about it, let alone tell people about it. I didn't want others to go through what I had, and that's why I was thinking about it when I saw the poster. I was on a work trip, as I help with certain cases as an expert witness. I do a lot of traveling and waiting, which can get pretty boring. I was driving through Michigan when I had to stop at a rest area. As I was leaving the restroom, I saw a wall with missing persons posters. My eyes went straight to a woman, and I couldn't stop myself. My breath caught in my throat as I looked at the poster. The woman's name was Elizabeth Rainey, 23 years old, and she had been missing for the last 4 months. The poster was new, not yellowed or creased, and I easily took it from the bulletin board. As I looked at her face, I realized how much effort must have gone into making each puppet. Her nose, wide forehead, the little dimple in her chin, the dent in her left cheek from a childhood accident, they were all there, carefully added to the meat puppet's face. I brought the poster back to my car, realizing my check-in time was coming up quickly. I called a friend who worked at my local police department. I told him about the girl, the YouTube channel, the videos, and he said he'd look into it, though he didn't sound very excited about it. When my friend called me later that day to thank me for the information, he sounded more interested in what I had to say. A few weeks later, I called him and offered to buy him drinks if he'd satisfy my curiosity. He agreed, but warned me that I might not want to know as much as I thought. Over drinks, he shared the whole sad story. My friend had a friend who was an FBI agent. After watching the videos, my friend told his FBI friend about it. He sent a link to the channel and asked him to check it out. After watching the videos, the FBI agent tracked the IP to see who this person was. It turned out that Elizabeth wasn't the only person missing in Michigan. Michael Chavez, Stephen Scoot, and Don Lee were also missing from the same area. The IP address led them to an old house near Lake Huron. The owner, David Matthews, owned the house and a lot of land around it. When they raided his house, they caught David by surprise and found more than they expected. He had been keeping them in his basement. The awful guy had a large finished basement with 4 separate rooms. The central room had a couch, a TV, and a big kitchen table with a small setup for the show and a camera. The puppets were on a shelf nearby, their bodies gray and sagging off their clothes hanger bodies. In the room, there was another big, rusty tool, a meat grinder. The meat grinder had bits of rotting meat hanging from it. He explained that the room had lots of flies, and the moaning sound started when they began breaking down doors. Don, Michael, and Steve were lying in their separate rooms. Most of them, anyway, he said, taking a big sip from his drink. He sent me the pictures of the crime scene. I wish he hadn't. David had been in the room that likely belonged to Elizabeth. He was wearing her dress, the fabric stretched badly around him, and he was crying in the corner. No matter what the agent said to him, he kept saying the same thing, his rocking making a strange grinding noise as his butt slid over the concrete. He kept saying, "I shouldn't have played God. I shouldn't have made her sleep." Just kept saying it again and again and again. The others didn't say much, my friend told me. He had taken parts from them, cutting off fingers, toes, arms, and legs, so he could grind them up to make the puppets. He used tight bands and animal tranquilizers to keep them alive. Michael and Steve were mostly just torsos, with Steve having only half a leg and Michael barely having an elbow. Dawn was missing her legs, but thankfully, her arms were still there. She had only been in the basement for a month, so he didn't have as much time to take from her. They got all of them out of there, and David Matthews, the meat man, was now in custody. A real win for the good guys, my friend said, looking far away, though none of them will ever walk again. The men are in a weird state, and the girl only talks nonsense, but at least we saved them before he could finish his sick play. They haven't found Lisa's body yet, but he told me they haven't given up. As I sit here, going over the facts as I write, it all runs through my head like a rat in a maze. Every moan, every sob, was this sicko harvesting his victims to replace the flesh of his precious puppets? I was an unwilling part of this, watching and encouraging this sick person to continue. I want to forget it, but I can't. I may never forget what I saw in that short hour of my life. I may never forget the terrible knowledge that the meat man has shared with me, and I may find my curiosity satisfied for quite some time. I think my days of wandering on YouTube out of boredom may be over.